Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 8 of Lilywhite Lounge. I'm joined by the world's best co-host, Gus, all the way from New York. How you doing, bro?
Doing well, Kish. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. I'm tired this week. A lot of work, and I also had my birthday last weekend, so I'm
Yes,
just
sir.
like,
Happy belated again.
yeah, thanks, bro. Yeah, I don't know. This week's been tough, just work wise, it's just long, but I'm happy to be just chatting about Spurs again in a more casual, chilled way. I
Yes,
think it's always
sir.
a bit of a therapy session here. Um, and yeah, I think today we're going to do things slightly differently. We're slowly going to pivot to recording slightly earlier in the week, as I know guys want to probably listen to our breakdowns quicker and we can get them out quicker and more close to the actual action. And then our podcast remains a bit more active throughout the week and not outdated. So this week, I know you've probably all heard a lot of breakdowns from the Bodo game. I didn't actually watch the Bodo game, so I watched it back, but not properly. So we thought we'd do a bit more of like a early season review, I guess, how things are going so far. Our producer Henry has kindly come up with some questions. Shout out to Henry; he does a lot of great work for our podcast. Um, so yeah, I think we're going to start with that. Firstly, I'm going to go with the first question to you, Gus.
hmm
Henry asks, "What is the biggest positive of the Frank era so far?"
It's a great question, Henry. Thank you very much. I think that as much as it's taboo to say because of the last few seasons that we've had, I think stability is the biggest positive. While we've had some jarring performances, some halves that we would like to forget, I think that we've produced performances that can get you results. While there have been moments that we've been really frustrated by the style of play or the patterns that we create or can't create, I think that stability is a really important first step towards having a consistent top four, top five team in the Premier League. And we've platformed some young players for success, giving them minutes, much needed minutes. I think that seeing how much Odebear has gotten minutes the last few games, the way that BERGVALL is playing consistently every week, Gray has started to emerge as kind of a reliable presence for Frank. I think those are all really important steps in the right direction for those guys. And then with stability, right? We have good rotation and decently well managed squad so far. I think we've been unlucky with some injuries. There's some conspiracies around Koulibaly's dead leg, but I think that besides him and a knock to Kuti, who seems to be back in training today, we've seen good rotation. Maybe not set up with the most expansive tactics in mind, but with rotation comes kind of a consistency of energy and a consistency of mental stability or structure, where players know when they're going to play and they're not overworked. So besides it, I think Poro, everyone's rotated at least one game, which is nice. Richie has gotten a little unlucky with the striker position, but once those guys are back, I'm assuming that Frank will rotate pretty heavily, especially with the way that Richie's performing currently. Yeah, I think the another positive with that is just kind of the maximizing the opportunities that we have in game. Right, we're not letting throws go by the wayside or corners go by the wayside. It seems like we have really positive kind of strategies for all situations in the final third when we have the ball, a dead ball. So there's obviously some negatives we'll get into, but I think if you have that with a squad that is struggling with creativity with the players that we're missing and the hold-up play that we missed with Solanke, I think that you can't be too mad. I've been trying to rein in some of my frustration. This week was kind of a boiling point for a lot of us because we saw two really frustrating performances back to back that we saw, like in my opinion, I saw it coming. Just with some of the performance leading up to it. I think that the Wolves game combined with Bodo was kind of the wake up call we needed, hopefully for Frank and going into a fixture before an international break against a newly promoted side. We'll see how they respond at Ellen Road. So I think that if we're fifth right
Fourth.
now with
Yeah.
fourth or fifth with not playing as well as we can, having not implemented multiple formations, more expansive patterns of play. If Frank can get his way and implement what I assume he had a plan to implement when he came here, if we add that, there might be some growing pains, but we might be a little bit more exciting, and we might be a little bit more enthused with what we see on the pitch. But yeah, those are my biggest positives. I think there's a couple, but also I don't want to say that stability is the most exciting thing to watch. But yeah, drawing some games that we were down 2-0, I don't remember that fight over the last few seasons. I saw someone say that it reminds them of the first half of Conte's second season, where we had really bad first half performances and late comebacks. I don't think it's that bad. We were really, really bad in those first halves under Conte. I think that we've shown that even games where we struggle to score in those first halves or second halves, that we're at least trying things, and we're trying to play from the back. We're trying to progress. It's not for a lack of effort, but maybe for a lack of ideas.
Yeah. I think I echo those positives. I think for me, the main positive of Frank is how every little detail seems to be addressed. So if we go to rotation, I think he's rotated really well. I think obviously the squad is not quite where we want it. I think injuries and probably a couple more transfer windows. So there's missing profiles in the squad, which we can't obviously do anything about. But I think he's rotated very well, and it's the type of rotation I like, which is constant. So each fixture you rotate out one or two players, so it doesn't really completely mess up the structure of the team. I think if you rotate in a way that previous managers have done, where we get to like a game against an easier opposition and you change out a whole team, then you end up struggling in that game you should be comfortable in. I think Doncaster was a good example of that, where we looked very comfortable by half time, and then we were able to kind of rotate a little bit more, even further. Then you've got set pieces. I think obviously that's a massive one. The way he's dealt with the media, I think, has been really good. I think the academy is looking good, and there's clearly been a nice relationship between the academy coaches and the first team, and there's like a nice transition there, with Williams Barnett getting a debut and Byfield and stuff making the bench. I think that's been all good. I think obviously the overall kind of patterns of play and setup needs work, but I think all the little details that he's covered has prepared us in the best possible way this season that we could have done. And now I think is the more difficult parts to come on to develop. And I think that leads us on nicely to, are we happy with the style of play and the direction of the team? And I think at the moment, no. But I think the podcast with John McKenzie, which was 3 episodes ago maybe, I was actually really probably overexcited by where we were at. And he kind of brought me back down to earth, I think, in that podcast, and made me look at kind of the way we were playing and looking at games without kind of adjusting for game state as well. And looking at the way we kind of creating chances and how the game changes and whether that's sustainable. And I think at the moment, the way we're playing probably isn't sustainable for where we want to be, but it's definitely sustainable in being stable, I guess. And maybe that's the kind of plan initially, is to stabilize. Obviously, last season was an absolute mess. And so he's probably wanting to set foundations first. I think style of play is important. I think style of play also buys you time. I think if you play well and you play an entertaining style of football and you don't get the result, people can see signs and they can get behind it. I think if you don't play well and then you don't get a result, then it's a really negative feeling. And that can turn, and we've seen that before under Mourinho and Conte. And so I think, yeah, I think the style needs to be improved. I think there's tweaks that can be made that can really dramatically improve that. I think personnel can do that. I think slight changes in the shape can do that. Having the ideas that we saw in pre-season, which I really liked in terms of the
Yeah.
3-2 build-up, which we haven't seen any of really, where Porro was kind of a sort of tucked in centre back in possession. You had a nice base in front who were kind of recycling the ball. You had a high and wide left back to allow the left winger to tuck in. I think all those things were really nice kind of patterns to help us progress the ball. And even though we didn't quite have the personnel in midfield, I think the structure aided that with the 10 dropping in and helping. And I just think he's gone really rogue recently and different with this kind of weird 4-3-3 shape, which is very static, very regimented, very rigid. I think it reminds me, to be honest, of the Nuno 4-3-3, which was like vacate midfield completely. Our midfield looks so empty all the time. The number eights are playing really high to kind of pick up the second balls off Kudus or whoever the other winger is. And there's no real fluidity in terms of playing through midfield. It seems to skip out the midfield. So that I think is a big concern for me. But I also know that Frank is not someone who's stubborn and will analyze every game and learn from it, I hope. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with most of that. I think that I was going to mention the fact that you're so right that when you perform well, when you're easy on the eye, you gain a lot of grace from your fan base, even the media and pundits. They're more likely to give you praise for the smaller things that don't come off, missed chances that you create. And you saw that with Nuno. He had some decent results through his first few games, but everyone was frustrated with the way that we were performing and the rigidity in his structure and his play style. I noticed that as well. Those triangles that we create with our eights so wide when there isn't anyone in the central areas really frustrate me because there was moments I missed the first half of the Bodo game, and the second half obviously we looked a little bit better, but there were moments when Bodo was getting it wide and squaring it right at the top of their box, and it feels like those passes aren't even an option for us in the final third. It feels like our eights are always underlapping, and we never have that central square ball that kind of opens up the pitch if you can squeeze it in. And I know that's a very tricky zone to get the ball into, but it feels like that opens up the pitch so much more. Obviously, our central progression from deep rarely goes through the central areas. But in the final third, I think to create openings on the wing, we've got to be able to find someone in the middle who is comfortable in that area. And I feel like at times we've kind of shied away from throwing the people that are more comfortable there for something that is more wide. And you can see some combinations that Odegaard and Xavi are creating on the left where, we entered into the half space into Xavi or Odegaard and he kind of lays it off from a run straight off of his toe. And it's creating something, but there isn't variety to that. And right now we're relying a lot on Kudus getting double teamed and laying it off to Porro for a deep cross or an early cross. And Porro's been unbelievable. I think that besides the 2 goals he allowed versus Bodo, we can blame the first one on Brennan if we want. That's a Porro masterclass. Allow 2 goals and score, create 2. So, we're relying. I think another positive I want to say before I get into some of the negatives is relying on our best players, which I think sometimes we didn't do under Ange. We didn't do so much under some other managers besides Kane and Son for so many years. We didn't get the balls in the right zones for our players that maybe weren't those two guys. So it seems as if the direction is pretty steady right now. I don't think we're progressing at a very high rate week to week, but I think that's tough when you have a game every 3 days, and making those big changes where we're going to change formation, change shape, with 3 days to prepare. I think that can be a little challenging for a manager that really hasn't done that at this level. So, he's figuring that out. I'm not disappointed with any of the things that he's decided to do. I think that it makes sense when you have a team that loses as many games as they did last year. It's a little bit of a mentality switch. I know that there was a lot of chatter over the summer about that, where it's like this mentality in the squad is going to stick from losing 23 games in the league. It's going to be so hard to go in every Saturday or Sunday and have the motivation and urge to want to get 3 points every weekend because they were so used to losing last season. And I think that's somewhat true, and that's the stability that Frank has added. Is like we're going to fight for our points every weekend. We're not going to give up, in the second half if we're down a goal because we can't create right now, and I like that out of him. But I also know that that's not very sustainable when we're relying on just set pieces and kind of own goals and relying on the other team to make mistakes. So central progression, patterns of play, kind of sloppy touches. I think there's been a lot of sloppy play technically, and I forgot who it was, but someone on Twitter today did like a list of like our technical players, and I feel like at times Spurs fans can get, and me included, can get very critical of our players not being technical enough because we went through so many years of having sloppy players. And I think at times it's what's the word? It's kind of like a symbiotic thing where like if someone is sloppy, the other person is sloppy, and no one can work off a player not performing. It almost is like we stoop to that player's level, especially in the midfield, where if someone is ghosting, the other two tend to ghost as well. And I'm not sure if that's a mentality thing or, I've seen it for years. It could be a Spurs thing where like it just, frustrates me and I'm the only one seeing it. But I'm wondering if you see that as well, where, we have technical players. It's not that we don't have technical players. I think that some of them can be sloppy. There's no doubt. But, there's a thing that we talked about last week with Richarlison, where he's like falling down. And I was frustrated with him against Bodo in the second half. I didn't catch the first half. I saw that howler of a miss from BERGVALL's cross. But
Yeah.
I think that there's some sloppiness. There's some lack of confidence in the attacking third in that final phase. So
Yeah,
maybe that irons itself out.
I think it's just that low floor. I think it seems like when Spurs, a lot of our squad have bad games, they have really bad games that can really cost us the result, really. And I think I've been a big speaker about the technical flaw of the team. And when you get players of a certain technical level, when they're not quite at it, they can still always rely on their technical ability because it's so natural. It's just something that just comes to them so easily. So that's like, if someone fires in a pass, their touch is always going to be perfect. And I think Spurs, for a supposed top 6 team, have had a real low technical flaw for a while. I think someone like Richarlison, you don't see players like that at major clubs. You don't. You might see players like Nicholas Jackson who misses chances, for example, at Chelsea, but there's still a certain technical level with someone like him that if you fire a ball into him, he's going to always be able to control it, and he can really hack it in terms of at a technical level. Someone like Brennan Johnson as well, of course, is similar story. So I think that's something that needs to be ironed out in the squad. I don't think you can afford to carry that many players below the technical level, maybe one, or especially barring the back four, you can't really afford to carry those at the top level. I think in terms of the structure, I made a video today about the fact that our fullback and winger are always on the same line. And that seems to be a structural issue because the winger's always receiving back to goal, and a lot of the top teams always have at least 2 players inside. So the 8 and one of either the fullback or the winger will tuck inside, and that just creates nicer angles to play at. But at the moment, it's always a play to the fullback, straight line pass down the line, and that doesn't give the winger any opportunity to receive it on the run and be able to run it as fullback because he's receiving it with a man behind him. So those kind of things are they're pretty easy to iron out, but it feels like they're there by design. It feels like a lot of our ball progression is just about getting it to the fullbacks and then playing it down the line. It feels very regimented and predictable. And I'm not saying that's necessarily something we can't use, but we need to have other ways of getting up the pitch. And if I actually think back to Frank's tenure, I can't really. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but or anyone who can think of a time where one of the midfielders got it and played through midfield, through the centre, so to a 10 or to the striker. It feels like every time we've created anything, it's come from pretty much Kudus hero ball more often than not, or some kind of second ball we've won where then we've got a bit more settled possession in their half and then we've popped it around a bit and we've put cross in or whatever. So I think, yeah, those structural things will need ironing out.
It's funny. It was yesterday? No, Tuesday. Tuesday, the first game we haven't played with Romero starting. I think it was.
Did he start against Doncaster?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Maybe not. I don't know. He might have. I can't remember.
I can't remember either. I think
I
it
watched
was.
that game, but I can't remember. But yeah, that's another major point.
Yeah, and I feel like when he's able to enter a ball into the central area, we kind of have to play combinations, and it works a little bit better when, or at least when we're pinning someone in. He can enter it in for, a one-touch combination with Pepe and Xavi, and it kind of works. But yeah, you're so right. I think that I can't remember, besides Burnley, where we were kind of in flow state for, a few minutes there, 20 or 30 minutes. I think that it's been get it to Kudus. Even when Xavi receives it, I think that we're just not optimizing him to the best of his ability. We could talk about him a little bit. It just feels as if it's a little stale, where even the players feel like they don't really have very many options, very many angles. And you're so right. Every time ball enters, and even when Kudus has it, we're bringing a double towards him not really out of necessity.
Yeah.
Even having like Gray underlap while Porro hangs back, I think that it adds a weird dynamic where Porro has to find a pass to Archie or our 8 that's on the right, and it just kind of messes up things.
Also, like having someone like Kudus, who's such a magnet for opposition players, can be so useful if you utilize it in terms of, okay, they're expecting us to go to Kudus all the time, and maybe you do it a couple of times, and then once that kind of attraction's there, it opens up space in midfield. But we don't seem to utilize those spaces that Kudus creates with all the magic he's got in terms of bringing players towards him. It just feels like we just give it to him and then hope for the best. But yeah, I think it's difficult to watch at the moment. But I think part of it's a squad issue. I do think that, and I think that the Bodo game is kind of the fact that we had to go to somewhere like Bodo and sit off them, which probably, I assume was by design. Like Frank seemed like
he said it in his interview,
so that
match interview. Yeah,
that shows me that the squad isn't good enough technically to go to a ground like that. And all the other top teams, even their second string 11, it wasn't our second string 11, it was a rotated 11, but would be able to go there and keep the ball and dominate the game. Maybe not create loads and loads of chances, but at least be in a bit of control and take the game to them and make them think about what they're doing. And we couldn't do that. And when I looked at the lineup, to be honest, I didn't expect us to be able to do that, and that shouldn't be the case. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, and like I said, I think it comes back to the technical flooring of the squad. We don't have a technical midfielder. Well, we have midfielders who are technical, but we don't have a specialist technical midfielder. All the top teams have one. And so I think those things, they'll need to be ironed out in terms of squad building. But yeah, like I said, the details, there's some details there that are for sure positive. And it's hard. I think it's hard to get the balance each time, because after a win, you feel like, oh, everything's great, and after these two performances, it's looking very negative. But I think there's definitely things to like and things to not like, and that's kind of where I expected us to be at under Frank. But I do need to see some sort of progression in the next game, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to me that you can go into a game against Bodo away with Richarlison and Brennan up top, who we spent 110 million pounds on, and they are the worst attackers on the pitch.
Yeah,
And I don't want to, I could complain about both of them forever, because they both frustrate me. But and I love them personally. But yeah, it's frustrating when I feel like I go into every season with like, okay, our squad's decent. They can compete. Um, you know, fifth or sixth I'll be happy with. Fourth I'll be happy with. Maybe we can snag a domestic cup. But it feels like by this time every year I'm dooming already about our technical floor.
yeah. But
Because
the thing is, I can excuse players like Odegaard because, like, fun, he's definitely not the finished article, but at least he's not going to bring us down. Like, he's going to be able to
yeah,
control the ball well, pass the ball well, move well. Like, it's not a kind of net negative
right.
with him on
Yeah,
the pitch.
he might try to take two men on and give the ball away, and that's his 19-year-old brain, right? Like
Yeah,
at least we have a 20. What is Richarlison 26 and Brendan's
older, I
22,
think.
something like that. Yeah, there's no excuse for senior players to kind of shy away from the spotlight in spaces when you know Brendan and Richie going into a game. I'm never really confident with. And combine that with no creativity in the midfield and a Bentancur, the kind of Sar double pivot where we're just terrified to progress and misplacing every pass. It's just an ugly combo.
Yeah,
I,
and reading out those selection of players, I don't think any of them should ever be playing on the same pitch at once, especially not all four. I mean, like, not obviously two of them can play, but you can't have all four of those people on the pitch.
I agree.
Especially in a front three, you can't have two suboptimal forwards. Like, they're you can maybe afford to carry one untechnical, unpretty attacker, but attackers are meant to be technically good. Like, that's sort of part of the responsibility of being an attacker. You need to be able to do things with the ball at your feet, and
Yeah.
if two of them can't, of the three, and the other one is clearly having big confidence issues,
Yeah.
and who's dragging us out of anything. So I think looking at the lineup, that was to be expected. But let's move on. So I'm going to say, so the next question is, name one player you've been pleasantly surprised about, and one player who's been a bit disappointing.
I'm going to talk about Poro for a second. I
Yeah,
think that I'm not surprised. Let me make that clear. I'm not surprised at all. He's a fucking machine. Like I saw some obviously we saw the Liverpool fans saying like we should have bought Poro. Frank Pong is not what they expected. I could have told them that.
I mean, if they wanted a direct replacement, then yeah, I
Give
mean,
us 85 mil.
yeah,
I think that Poro's durability and chance creation can't go unnoticed. He started against Doncaster. He's played like every game. I think, and it's just incredible to see some of the things that he's able to do from his zones. I think that we could talk about his comparison to Trent, but I think that he is always going to surprise me. Just his ability to kind of be out of the game for a while, where we're not really getting him in the right positions, and then we bring on a player like Kudus who draws two, and he has 3 or 4 free, early crosses to put in, and he's going to put 2 or 3 on a plate. And obviously the Kudus chance to Odegaard was nice, but that was because they were worried about the layoff to Poro in the early cross. And I think that the danger he creates on that right side with Kudus, and that's why I'm so excited if we can get more Gray minutes, which I'm praying, because he just seems like a presence that makes them both comfortable, right? Like we can enter the ball into Gray, and he's able to back down a defender and roll him and find someone, and his IQ is just so much higher than I think a lot of the eights that we put in that position, technically. And he's he does have some creation ability. He can put a ball, on a platter for someone. I think that Porro is the key to that right side, and when Romero's is fit, that right side is pretty potent. With Gray, Sarr when he's playing really well, I think he combines with Kudus well. But I think Porro pulls that right side together. And also when Kudi's not there, he is one of the only reasons that right side is functional.
Yeah.
Even with Kudus, like Kudus is amazing, magic on the ball, but I think that Porro allows him to get some reprieve when we've entered the ball into him 15 times straight.
Well,
And
at the moment, our literal game plan is give the ball to Porro, let
yeah,
him pick a pass to Kudus, whether that's to his feet or in behind,
yeah,
and that's it.
it's honestly astounding how great Porro can be chance creation wise or just progression wise when everyone else on the pitch is struggling besides his partner on the right side. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. I love him to death. I think that I was glad he got the armband versus Doncaster. And yeah, I've been really not surprised by him, just very pleased with the ability to play basically every minute for the last
Yeah.
2 seasons, and then come into the season where everyone's like, "Oh, this will be his year that he falls off,"
Yeah.
because he's played so many minutes. It's like he still might at one point, but I'm gonna praise him while he's alive and cooking.
Well, I'm going to continue it a little bit because mine is Kudus, and I mean, of course, it's quite an obvious one, but I mean, I didn't quite expect him to be this good. I think he's unlike anything I've really seen at Spurs, to be honest. Like, there's just a crazy amount of ability there, and I still don't think we're tapping into it enough. I also think there's so much you can do with him, whether that's if we want to have him on the touchline at times, being a 1v1 threat, it's great. But I also think at times we can move him infield depending on opposition and the situation. If you had maybe someone like Spence who might want to be more up and down the line with his engine and his athleticism, you might tuck Kudus in at times and get him more central, because I think he can do all of that. The way he can turn any shit pass into just like it just sticks to him. It
Oh
can
my
be
god.
at his chest, it can be 10 yards in front of him, and the opponent's got a head start, and he just turns anything into a good pass. I think that's a crazy ability to have, especially when our technical level is not great. I think he's a get out of jail free card because you can just ping the ball to the right flank and Kudus will be there somewhere. And he's not 6'5" or anything like that. He's just incredible. And so I think that's the one for me. But I also think we're not using him enough to impact games. I think he's being really good, but a lot of his good work isn't necessarily leading to goals. Where I think it could if we tap into it right. So that I'm super excited for him and how we go on to use him. I think one player I've been disappointed with, and obviously there's the obvious ones, but they're not. They weren't. I didn't expect crazy amounts from them. I think BERGVALL for me has been disappointing, but I don't think it's necessarily his fault. I think that 10 just doesn't suit him, and like I just don't. He just feels a bit clunky there and a bit. I don't think he quite has the nimbleness to play there. I think when BERGVALL looks really smooth is when he gets into his stride and when he's galloping with it and he can change it. And obviously he can turn well in midfield in deeper areas, but in those like really tight number 10 pockets, I think he's a bit too big and built for that. And I don't like him as a sort of box crasher, although I think he can do it. I just don't think that's optimizing his abilities. And so I more have the disappointment with the way we're using him rather than him. I don't think there's anything kind of wrong with him as a player or the way he's performing. I think he's just being used badly. And so I've been a bit disappointed with him and like everything around him, because I think there's obviously so much talent there, but I just think he's someone who needs to be all action. He needs to be closer to the ball. He needs to be, yeah, in the middle of the park. I don't like him this high up. Is there one you have who you're disappointed with or similar situation, or is it BERGVALL as well, or who?
I like your BERGVALL take. I've seen it a lot online, and I agree. I don't think 10 fits him. That quote a couple of days ago was funny. He's like, "I'm a 10 now," and I was like, "No, you're
I
not,
don't think
son.
you are.
No, you're not, son." Maybe you turn into one, but yeah, you're right. He's a little too upright. Like you see it
Yeah.
with Madison when he's on the ball, his ability to wiggle, like it is just like unmatched. And yeah, no, I like your take about BERGVALL. I think that he's better where he's more action. He can touch the ball every time we try to progress up the pitch, and he shouldn't be just reserved for that
There's
wide
like
wide triangle.
there's a reason why tens are normally shorter, more like slight in size because the spaces in that area are so limited.
Yeah.
You so need to be able to turn like in the tightest way possible. Um, and even like tens, like, and I know Bellingham is an incredible player, but that for me looks clunky sometimes. And he's someone who can probably turn smoother than BERGVALL can.
Hmm.
Um, but the tens that have always been the best are those that can, yeah, move like that and really nimble.
Hmm.
Um,
It fascinates
barring
me
a couple,
how it
barring a couple
fascinates.
freaks, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, fascinates me how Palmer does it because he's lanky and like bigger
Yeah.
body, but I mean, he's just technically
So yeah,
outstanding. Like he's just not getting the
yeah,
ball off of them, and he's strong, and
yeah.
his vision just like eyes everywhere.
I
So
think
he
that's it.
doesn't he doesn't really need to be that nimble because he can just thread a pass or his
Palmer has
his
the ability to like
feints.
slow the game
Yeah.
down or make the game look slower than it is,
Hmm.
because of how intelligent he is on the pitch, not off the pitch. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, you're right. I think like someone like De Bruyne is one I was going to say is a bit of a freak in that sense because I think he was quite built and but there was something, but yeah, probably same sort of thing, the intelligence and that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's I think the disappointing one so
Yeah.
far. But let's finish the questions.
Wait,
Um,
I haven't given my
yeah, go on.
disappointment.
Yeah, yeah, go on.
I need to slate on. I need to shit on someone. I think maybe not, but um, I was gonna say Odebear, and people who know
Yeah,
me might be surprised by that. I haven't tweeted about him in a while, just because like he frustrates me for a number of reasons. First of all, I acknowledge that he's 19. I acknowledge that this is his first real run of games since we bought him. Maybe
I
I
think
mean
he's
like
older than 19, by the way. I think he's 21.
no, him and Tell, I believe, are both 19, if I'm not mistaken.
I
Or
thought
both
Tell
turned
was
20. Sorry, both turned 20 this year.
okay. Okay,
They're both turning 21
yeah,
during the seasons. So they're both 20. My bad.
yeah.
But yeah, no, Odebear is frustrating to me not because he's not trying things. I think that he's done enough for me to realize that he genuinely needs to figure out some unnatural confidence, right? He doesn't have the natural kind of gravity and confidence that you would need in a really accomplished winger because he's still young. But like I see so much kind of link play between him and that left side that he can be so much better than he is. And that's just me kind of loving him and knowing that he has it, but also knowing that we've given him an opportunity here where he's in the Champions League squad. He's playing left wing pretty consistently because of our injuries and our inability to play Brennan there. He's gonna get run, and we need to see a little bit more out of him. And I know that front three on Tuesday wasn't really conducive for him to be, you know, the difference maker up front, because we still can't expect that from him. But I think that there's been moments recently. Doncaster was a decent performance. I think that he played decently well. I missed the first half, and I know that was his better half. But the last 20 minutes against Bodo, I thought that he was pretty solid. But frustrating and disappointing, I think, is a good way of kind of summarizing his start to the season. And we need more out of him at least till January until we can figure that out. Whether we're loaning out Tell or bringing Tell into the Champions League squad, who has actual Champions League experience. But right now, he's going to get a lot of game time, and we need to see a little bit more out of him, a little bit more initiative. Um, but I do like the way he combines with Xavi, and I think he makes Spence a little bit more comfortable on the left.
Yeah.
Um, and
I,
and that's an important aspect for his game, right? Like the players that are going to be closest to him like
yeah.
playing with him, and I
Yeah.
think that that's something that we can kind of take a light to. Is like he's never going to be right now. He's never going to be that guy who you expect him to cut in and put a shot on target and find that space every time. He just doesn't have that confidence about him right now, but I know that he has the ability to wiggle around players. I think that some people don't see the small things because we expect him to be that dribbly winger when we bought him. A lot of people had high expectations. We expected him to be a little bit more accomplished. But I can see some of the small things that he does that helps Spence, Destiny, and Xavi on that side. That obviously that's the side that we're trying to figure out right now. With our inability to create centrally, we need both flanks to be effective, or we're going to be super one dimensional and be very predictable. So him combining with those players, having them trust him is good start, but I think he's got to show me a little bit more. Obviously, final product, everyone says that, but I think a little bit more like fuck it, we ball mentality. Like
Yeah.
if I make a mistake, I make a mistake, but at least I'm gonna try.
I
And
feel like
there's some there, but need to see more.
I feel like for him, like for me, he's at left wing by default now because there's not much else, and
Yeah.
for me, he gives no net negative. Like I said, like he's someone who his consistent level is good. It's not special at the moment, but it doesn't take away from the team. That's for sure. It plays to probably where the team's level is. So if we're playing really well, I think Odebear is a big part of that. But if we're playing poorly, he's not going to make it worse. But he's quick because of that level of technique. But my main thing with him is like whenever he does something good, it's not because he's taken the initiative to do so. It's because he didn't really have anything else on. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, the defender's showing me the line. Okay, fine, I'll go down the line. And then often it'll be good. But if the easy pass is on, he's making the easy pass. And that's what I just don't quite understand with him. But yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it's a long season for him, and like we said, he's still young. But yeah, at the moment, I think that's been disappointing. We're not gonna preview Leeds because I'm gonna post a short kind of lineup I want to see out tomorrow. And I know we've been recording for a while, so let's end on the last question, and then let's come up with the things we're going to recommend people. So, last question: where are we finishing in the Prem this year?
Drum roll, please. I'm gonna say fifth. I'm gonna say solid fifth. Hopefully, that qualifies for Champions League. Um, I think that we've shown enough in the league that we're going to be able to kind of eke out performances to get draws, wins in games that we probably don't deserve to win. And I think that we'll eventually figure out the attacking phase of play enough so that we aren't too reliant on set pieces and too reliant on kind of the opponent's mistakes. But I do think that there is, depending on how we perform in some of the cups, I'm not sure once we really get into the business, people call the business end, anywhere from like Christmas time to the end of the season is this is the time I often see our teams, as we know, just injuries kind of capitulate and lose some spunk. And if we can avoid that, and Frank shows me that he has some more tactical fluidity when it comes to setup and the zones that we're getting our players in, I think that we have the potential to easily finish in top four. I'm really not, like, I'm looking at the league table and I'm not very scared by anyone, unfortunately, besides Arsenal. Obviously, Liverpool is going to give us fits. That's just our nightmare fixture. But I don't think Chelsea are particularly good this year. They're dealing with the Club World Cup fatigue. I don't
Yeah.
think Newcastle are particularly good in the league. I mean, they've looked better, but
No,
yeah, I think there
yeah,
might be an unorthodox top five this season that
yeah.
we're
I
not
think
really expecting.
I would have gone fifth as well. I think Chelsea are not great, but they just have depth that
Yeah.
we don't have. Um, I think City are going to win the league.
Mm.
I think they'll hit a point where they just win and win and win and win because of
Win like
Guardiola
every
will
game.
figure it out. And then I think Arsenal and Liverpool are good, but not amazing. And then I think Villa look awful. Newcastle not great. Um, yeah, I don't
Palace
think.
might be the fourth best team in the league.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I think depth might kill them because they're in Europe.
Yeah,
I think their depth's actually pretty bad,
it's
but
awful.
they are looking really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I like a lot of their players. So yeah, I'm gonna go for fifth as well. So yeah, that's our little sort of early season review. Obviously, remember, guys, we're gonna move this slightly earlier going forward now, so look out for it slightly earlier. And as we always do, we can stop talking about Spurs for a little bit
Yes, sir.
and recommend something for the people to go check out.
I have an unorthodox one. I was
Yeah,
thinking about this on the way home from work today because I like to be prepared for these on the spot. Recommendations are always pretty
yeah,
bad. I want to tell people to turn notifications on my Twitter profile and have their sports betting app open.
yeah,
If you see me tweet about a game that is happening and it's
yeah,
currently on and it's live, and I
yeah.
tweet something like, "Oh wow, this player is not playing very well," or "This team is so good," go
That
on your sports betting app and live bet the opposite. Anyone who knows me knows I have the worst Twitter jinx of all
jinx.
time. I can't remember my most recent one off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
it was the Galatasaray Liverpool firework display
Oh
outside the
yeah, yeah. I
hotel.
saw that.
I
Yeah, yeah.
tweeted that morning, and I was like, it was a joke, and of
When does
course
it
I had
ever
like
work?
10 replies that all took it seriously. They were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I remember this time, and this time they lost," and I was like, "It's a joke," I was just making fun of
Yeah.
Turkish fans because they're always in my DMs when I tweet about them, and I find it hilarious. So I said, "When does this gimmick ever work?" And of course,
It
Liverpool
worked.
lose 1-0. And so I saw someone like respond to it when the game hadn't happened yet, and he was like, "Imagine you jinx this," and I was like, "Welcome to my account." And I really need
Yeah.
someone to like try it because if they put money on the opposite of what I
Win-win.
say and it happens, I better get a little bit of that. Like I
Yeah.
better get a little bit of it, or I should start doing it or something because like it can't go on like this. It
No.
just can't. It just can't.
That's a good one. To be fair, I'll start doing it, and then we can just put out opposite takes. Then one of us is gonna win.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I haven't actually got one massively this week. I'm going to say. Let me think of a film that I've watched recently. I rewatched Waves, which is a great film.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Um, it's an A24 film. Sort of split in two halves. The first half, something quite traumatic happens, and then the second half is how the family sort of deal with that. Um,
Okay.
it's very, very good film. You can't really explain it because it kind of ruins it, but it's
Fair
called
enough.
Wave. So go check that out. Yeah, I love that. I love that film. Um, but yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Um, yeah, we'll obviously be switching the time more next week. So this is the last sort of Thursday-ish recording, Friday post podcast. But yeah, make sure
Hopefully
please,
Monday or Tuesday.
yeah. So
We'll get it out.
yeah, please do also leave reviews on Spotify, guys, because we're trying to push the Spotify especially. So reviews, ratings, share it with your friends, share it with your family. That would be really, really helpful. And yeah, thanks for listening. Hopefully we get back to winning ways on Saturday against Leeds.
Yes,
And
sir.
then we can have a bit more of a lively, positive podcast next week. Thanks,
Crossing my
Gus,
fingers.
for being back again.
Of
And
course.
have a good week, guys.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.